To God be the glory. Isn't it been a beautiful day? Wasn't those some awesome testimonies of fatherhood? We're just so grateful for all of the fathers around the world. And we thank God for you all. And we're just grateful that we get to celebrate this day. But before I talk about fathers today, I just want to just go back and take a look at our message on last week. And I want to just say hands off and hats off to Minister Womble and his team. They did an awesome job in celebrating our grads and making them feel important even in the way we see things. And so on last week, he dropped some gems on us, so I hope y'all picked up what he laid down, because he laid down some stuff that I think if we carry that, we'll have a future worth finding. And the first thing that I want to give is his bottom line, and his bottom line was you can trust an unknown future to a known God. You can trust an unknown future. How many feel that the future is unknown? Well, guess what? Even before COVID and before all the protests and all of those things, the future was always unknown. And I'll talk about that. So that was the bottom line. If you don't remember anything else about his message, please remember that. And then he gave us some points there, some gems, some other gems that he dropped on us. And the first one was good plans are God-centered plans. So if you want your plans to flesh out, don't you make them on your own, but you make them and you take them to God and let God direct your path, and he will. And then the second gem that he dropped on us is that future success depends on God's past performance. And I got something to add to that today, and that's, I was saying, man, I can use that, but I won't. But that's good stuff. And then the third one that he gave us was that God has the final say over the future. Now that ought to be promising for us. Because oftentimes when we look at circumstances and situations, we can sort of feel like, man, how is this going to turn out? But since we know that we know that we know who's sitting on the throne, then we can be at peace with that. And then he gave us 4 ways that you can connect your future with God. And he gave you for a future worth finding. And the first one that he said that you need to know is that know that plans and dreams can change, but God does not. Yeah, your plans can change. How many had some plans in your life change? Yeah, tap on the glass if you did, tap on the glass. All right, then the second one that he says, you know that education is valuable, right? But your eternal soul is priceless. It's a substance of life. It's the substance of life. And then the third one, Jim, that he dropped on us is know that the world will tug at your heart. And I mean it will pull on it and it will pull on it, but stand firm on God's truth. You can keep your feet on the ground and your head in the air. And if we can do that, some powerful things can happen. And the last gem that he dropped on us is we get to know God by connecting with others who know God. And so in our doing that, that's how you're going to connect your future to a future worth finding. So I just want to thank him for that awesome job again, and I thank God for him and all that he's doing. Not only on the stage, but also behind the stage. And I'm just thankful for him as being my spiritual son. And now, so I just want to remind you all of a few things before I get going, because I'm really excited. I really am. And I'm glad they told me I had at least an hour and a half on Father's Day to preach. So I'm going to take the whole hour and a half. So just sit back and go get you some lunch or whatever and come back. I'm going to still be here. But here's something I do seriously want to share with you all. I hope if you haven't already done so, please pull down our app. And the reason for that, it allows you to stay connected with us, and you can have your church with you wherever you go. And here's why. Our new series will start in July, and the title of that new series is Next. N-E-X, next. And that series will be focusing on what do we do next amidst the protests and the pandemic. A lot of us have been looking for where is God in all of this and what we're supposed to do. And some of you may think I have been silent, but that doesn't mean I haven't been studying. And because of that, we're going to take the month of July and look at what God says we ought to be doing next. And so that's the series that will be coming forth. And then on next week, please come back and join us. We got those folks that God has called to be a part of this church body. We've got some baptisms, and we've got some folks who have become members of this body of Zion, and we're going to be celebrating them on next week. So please come on out, whether that's 9:30 or 11:30. Amen? Amen. So let me ask you, Father's Day, I asked the question, what's the difference between Father's Day and Mother's Day? And jokingly we said, the presents. But there's a huge difference between fathers and mothers, not just the day, but just in their roles, in their totality. But men lately have been maligned. If you look at most of your TV shows and your movies and things of that nature, you either see men being laughed at or being acted as though they're ignorant, or we see these superheroes, that can do these super godlike things. But we don't see many well-balanced men that are carrying out day-to-day decisions in our lives. And that's not by accident. That's by a design of the enemy. And let me just tell you why. Research. This isn't what the Bible. Well, let me say it this way. Research proves us what the Bible is promoting. Here's what research shows. It shows that when a father is active in the life of a child, that child will be more well-balanced, that child will less likely go to prison, that child will less likely, if it's a girl, get pregnant out of wedlock, that child will have self-esteem and self-confidence. All of this, if there is a father that is positively involved in the life of a child. And so we have a huge role. Not that mothers aren't important. So let me just go ahead on and put a period right here. Because mothers, you got your day. I told you what role you played on Mother's Day. And if you missed that and start feeling some kind of way today, I'd say go back to our archives and listen to May 10th, a woman worth finding. But today I want to talk about a man worth finding. Now, all that I just told you about the impact of what a father has, as I said, this is medical and scientific research. But all they do is promote or prove what the Bible promotes. Science and research only proves what the Bible promotes. And so I want us to take a look at the book of Joshua. Now, Joshua was not a psychologist. He wasn't a sociologist. He didn't have his PhD, but he understood this male role model and the importance of this phenomena in all of history. And if you don't have your devices, again, remember I told you to pull out your app, because you can do some great things with the app. You can follow me on social media at Herb Redrick. That's my Twitter handle. But also inside of the app, you can pull down different versions of the Bible, and you can take sermon notes. And so the translation I'm going to come from is the NIV. So you can go ahead on and do that. Find that app on there. And then Joshua, and I want you to go to the 24th chapter. The 24th chapter of Joshua. And I'm only going to look at 2 verses, but I'm going to talk about the whole chapter. Let's start at verse 14. Joshua, chapter 24, did I say? And starting at verse 14. Hear the word of the Lord. Here's what he says now. He says, now, he just starts this off. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Isn't that what it says? Now, watch these next words. Throw away the gods that your ancestors worshiped beyond the Euphrates and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. Now, listen to this next part here. He says, but if serving the Lord, watch this now, if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, I just want you to put an underline under that word, undesirable to you. Then, he tells you to make a choice. Then choose for yourself when? Today, whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served, at the beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites. in whose land you are now living. Isn't that what he says? But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. I want to talk about a man worth finding. Joshua wrote this letter about this part of this book about 20 to 25 or 30 years after the children of Israel had come into the promised land. Now, that promised land was exactly what God had promised them. It was flowing with milk and honey. In other words, the stock market was off the chain. Everything was going well. They were making money hand over fist. Their cattle were what did it call when they're lowing, when they're giving? Yeah, they were giving out more cattle. Yeah, they were multiplying. There's another word for it. It'll come to me later. Let me just slow down. Their livestock were multiplying. Their fields were bubbling up. Their olive vineyards were just filled with olives. Their grape vineyards were just filled with grapes. They were living in houses, you all, that they didn't have to build or pay for. Say amen, somebody. How many of you would want a house that you didn't have to build or pay for? God just says, move on in there. It was already furnished. Had the latest plasma TV, what they call them now, QTVs now. They're QTVs. You know, they had the latest TVs, had the cars already in the garage and everything. Okay. And, this was good stuff. Yeah. Now notice now, this is when Joshua is talking to them. He says now. Now that word now has a twofold meaning. If you take verse 14 and push all the way back up to starting at verse number 2, it's actually God that starts to talk, or Joshua's saying what God has said to him of all the things that God has done. And notice now, when you look at this historical record that God is giving them, starting there about the second verse all the way down to verse 13, God has given him his record. God has set the record of what kind of God he has been. He says, even when your great, and I can keep going, about 600 or 700 years grandfather, Terah, was beyond the Euphrates, was on the other side. God says, I started blessing you then because I pulled out Abraham out of that, and from Abraham all the way up to your present moment, I have been undefeated. So notice now. So this word now means now that you look at God's track record, now that you look at what God has done for you in your life, when you look back where God has brought you from, has God brought anybody from someplace dark and down and in the dumps? Has God lifted you out of the muck and the miry clay? Has God done it? He said, when you look back from where God has brought you from, when you look back at who you were and what you used to be, but God has still been there, he says, now. He's saying now, with all of that information that you have, here's what you ought to do. He starts giving them some commands. These aren't options. The Bible doesn't give us options. It gives you choices, but not options. Now, you may say, wait a minute. I'll let you figure that out later, and I'll show you what I mean here. This is a command. This is a command. He says, fear the Lord. Now, let's just stop right there. This word fear, it means more than being frightened. And I want to just talk about the word in its context, not attaching it to what you need to be afraid of, but what this word fear means in its totality when you see it in the Bible, and most of the time when it just doesn't mean that they were afraid of what happened. It means here, the word frightened or fear here means something or someone that you respect or revere because of their power and or position. Let me say that again. This word fear means someone or something you revere or respect because of their power and or position. Are y'all with me that far? So there are many people or things or places that we fear or we respect. Just take it on your job. Some of you really don't do a good job because you love it. You do a good job because you fear the consequences of not doing a good job. You feared the consequences of what will happen if you didn't get those ends you got from that job to be able to make those ends meet. Oh, let me talk over here to this side of the TV. Yeah, because this side of the TV or your smartphone or your app isn't listening to me. Some of us, let me just go even farther. Some of us don't obey laws because we love the laws. We obey the laws because of the consequences of the laws. Can I just take a little sidebar here? And I'll be talking about this more here in the next month or so. Yeah, I'm going to say it because you're going to hear me say this often and over and over. I'm not against good laws. Don't hear me wrong when I say what I'm about to say. But laws don't change people. Laws only provide consequences for your actions if you don't obey those laws. All right, so just hold that. And like I say, I'm not against good policy, but don't think policy are going to make changes that you're fighting for. I'll leave that right there. Okay. All right. So that's fear. So he tells us here now, the fear. Now, he had to give us the object of what we ought to fear. Because remember, I said you can fear anything. You can fear your employer. You can fear your spouse. You can fear the community. You can fear police. Notice he didn't say fear the coronavirus, although it's deadly and it's real. He didn't say fear police officers, although some of them will harm us just because of the color of our skin. He didn't say fear a political party, whether they're sensitive or insensitive to who we are. He didn't say fear a political leader, even though they think that they know everything. He didn't say any of those things. He says fear the Lord. Now, what he's saying is that this person that he's telling you to fear ought to have your highest respect because of their power and their position. Are y'all walking with me that far? And because of their power and their position, you ought to fear them because of what they could do to you if they wanted to. All right. So now, that's the first command. He says, fear the Lord. Now, he starts here, and he starts to tell us some things we ought not do because we fear the Lord. He says, fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. So the first thing I want you to remember here is, and I'm going to spell these words because they sound very similar, and this was intentional by me, but I hope it's going to help you. The first thing he commands us not to do is to be an idol worship. That's I-D-L-E. Worshiper. I-D-L-E. Y'all know what that word means? Meaning you're doing nothing with your worship. All right? Now, how do we do idol worship? Well, he says here, if you don't fear the Lord, all right, you won't serve the Lord. And so he's saying here that in our fear for the Lord, it ought to cause us to behave a certain way. And he says that we ought to serve the Lord. When you read those two verses, the words serve or worship are really interchangeable in the Greek and the Hebrew. They mean the same thing. Now, most of us talk about coming to church to worship. I'm going to get my worship on. I'm going to get my worship on. But this word worship and serve actually is talking about your lifestyle. How you live your life day in, day out, every minute, every second, every hour of every day is either an act of worship or an act of not worshiping God. That's the only two choices of everything you do. Everywhere your hands go, everywhere your feet go, everywhere your mouth go, everywhere your head goes, everywhere your ear goes, everywhere your eye goes, everywhere your mouth goes, every part of you, wherever any part of you goes, is either worshiping God or not. And so when you're doing that, he's saying, serve God with, look what he says. Couldn't he give us a day off? He says, serve God just on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Sundays. We could go with that, couldn't we, brothers? We would like some time off to do our own thing. Don't act like you. Wow. Tap the glass, tap the glass, tap the glass. But he's saying here now that every bit of our being, all faithfulness means in our entirety, in our wholeness, in our completeness, that we ought to serve him. He used the word faithfulness and all. If he just said faithful, he could have left it alone, but he's saying, no, here's when you need to be faithful in everything that you do, in all that you're doing. You need to always be faithful in all that you're doing, in your doing it to the glory of God. That's man and woman and humanity's just end, is to glorify God in everything we do. Everything. Even when we're eating. Yeah. Even when we're sleeping. And who we're sleeping with. All right, I'll leave that alone. But I'm going to touch it some more. I'm coming back to it because it's a very powerful. I'm going to say this right here. It's a very powerful relationship between man and God and man and woman. It's interconnected. You can't separate the two. And I'm going to show you that right here because the same faithfulness he's talking about to him is the same kind of faithfulness he's talking about our having in our relationship with our women. Not multiple women for each of us, but for the woman you're in relationship with. Let me just clear that up too. I saw some of y'all like, yeah. Nah, let me just break that down. And yeah, some of y'all say, man, I didn't know that. Guess what Pastor said? Nah, don't y'all just cut that piece out and post that. Don't y'all do me like that. All right. So let me give you your first gem here. He's saying here that when we fear the Lord, our faithfulness follows. Listen to me carefully. When you fear the Lord, that's when he is in that top position. When he is Lord of lords, God of gods, King of kings, when he's over everything, then you will follow him in everything he asks you to do. Your faithfulness will follow him. Now, so he's saying there that your service will follow him. What you do with your time will follow him. What you do with your money will follow him. What you do with your energy will follow him. Everything you do will follow him. He's saying now, so don't be in idol worship, whereas you're not serving the Lord in every capacity of your life. That's IDLE. Now, the second command he gives, he says, now throw away the gods. And he really gives us three groups of gods in verses 14 and 15. And I'm just going to pull them out for you so you can look at them. He says the God beyond the Euphrates River. All right, that's one set of gods. He says the gods in Egypt. And then he says the gods of the Amorites. Now, I'm just going to lump all of them together and I'm going to talk about them separately. But let me tell you what he says here. That word throw away means take them out of your presence, take them off of your premises, and take them out of your practices. Say, ouch, if you can't say amen. He's saying throw them away. Get them so far away from your being attached to you that they're no longer attached to you. Because he's talking about your fidelity at this moment. Remember I said your relationship with God is just like your relationship with your wife. He's saying that you're to have no other God like you're to have no other wife. He's saying that your fidelity to her is the same way as your fidelity to me. God is a jealous God just like your wife is a jealous wife. And I don't mean jealous until the point of rage and anger. There is a healthy degree of jealousy. In fact, if your wife isn't jealous about a little something, you ought to be wondering something, brothers. Well, yeah, go on. I don't care where you go. Go on about your business. Go on. Just do whatever you want to do. I'm fine with it. Hey, Jody. No, Jody got your gallon gone. Y'all remember that? Yeah, all right. Okay. I'm just trying to help you out, brothers. I'm just trying to help you out. Sometimes you say, oh, man, she don't care what I do. She don't. She don't care what you do. She don't care where I go. She don't. She don't care where you go. She don't care when I get in. She don't. Okay. All right. Yeah. Then you better start checking some things. Now that's I'm just trying to help you. All right, those are gods. Now, the gods of the gods beyond the Euphrates. He's going all the way back to Abraham and before. For some of y'all, it's going to require y'all to go read some of the book of Genesis. Read the first 11 chapters. But really, when you get to chapter 10, 11, and 12, really when he brings Abraham out of his father, Terah, who lived in Haran, and that was beyond the Euphrates. And then Jacob, I'm just giving you a little biblical history because I want you to go do some reading. If none of this makes sense to you, you can go back and see it. Jacob took a wife from that same area, and she had some gods. Her name was Rachel. She stole her father's gods and hid them up under herself when she was sitting on them. Now, y'all go back and look at that. Those were the gods that people worship, gods that were made with their hands, that they could bow down and worship to, and that they thought that when they could see that God and they could pray to that God, and they would even offer their children children to that God. How many of y'all seen that Spectrum commercial? Where the guy comes up at the top and, they need him to jump into the hot lava so it could rain. Yeah, so they're looking for the God of rain, and what they're trying to do is appease the God, all right, to be able to produce something for them. And many of us try to appease God so God can do something for us. Are y'all listening to me? See, TV's be trying to show you a little something. So what they're doing, they're worshiping a God in order to get something. And so many of us, that's our worship life. We worship God and to get things from him. And because of that, they made their gods of the things they want. So if they wanted rain, they worship the God of the water or the God of rain. If they were into fertility, they worship a fertility god to make their crops grow, to make their women bear children. If they were into the sun, they would worship the sun god. If they were into the valley, they wouldn't fight a war unless you came into the valley, because they believed that their God lived in the valley. If it was a mountain god, they worshiped the God of the mountains. If it was a wind god, they wanted the God of the winds. They had all of these different images and different designs of things that they would worship, because they believed that those things were God. And God, Joshua is saying, you need to throw all of those things away, because when you go back and you look at God's track record over those 600 plus years that he's talking about, when he starts at the second chapter, God is undefeated. God had not lost a battle. In fact, when he was in Egypt, he was 10-0. He took down them by the blood of the Nile. He took down with flies and frogs and gnats and darkness and boils and hails and storms and the firstborn. He took them all down. He says, I'm undefeated. Why? Because I am El Shaddai, God Almighty. I am Jehovah Jireh, the God who will provide. I am Jehovah Nisi, the God who will fight your battle. He says, I don't need you to have another God and want me to be one too. So let me give you a second gem. God wants demands an exclusive relationship. God demands an exclusive relationship. See, I didn't get the call, brothers, that we were wearing black and gray. I tried. I try to hang out with you, but God wants exclusive relationships. Just like we're to have exclusive relationships with our wives. Period. That's it. None other should be able to encroach on certain territories. Things should be off limits. All right? So that was idol worship, I-D-O-L. You had your first one, idol, I-D-L-E worship. You had your second one, I-D-O-L worship. Now, let's just talk plain. We don't do that today, though, do we? We don't have idol worship. We don't worship the God of the sea or the God of the rain or the God of the mountains or God of wood or God of metal or God of gold and silver. We don't do that, do we? Well, let me just walk you through some ways that we could be the same way. Now, remember, I said this was happening. Joshua was telling them this during a time of prosperity, that he was calling them to this covenant renewal. He's calling for a crisis commitment because they're in the middle of a crisis and they don't know it yet. You see, we were in the middle of a crisis and we didn't know it yet till God brought the crisis to the front. You see, when you're doing so well, we can sometimes forget about who God is. Your house can become your God. It's made of wood and it's made of stone. You see, because that can become a God. Your jewelry can become your God. It's made of gold. It's made of silver. It's made of diamond. Those things can become gods. It can be, how about your electronics, your cars, your electronics? They're gods of metal. We become so attached to those things that they demand so much of us, that they take a high place in our lives, that we begin to worship them, that they take priority in our relationship with God. I know there's several things that God has done here with what we're experiencing with the protests and the pandemic. He's hit a nerve. Remember, I said things were just rolling on an economic level. And the same was happening with the people in Israel in Joshua's day. I told you they were living in houses they didn't have to pay for. Their crops were coming up good. Their stock market was going up. Their 401k was rising. And see, can I just talk plain? In the world in which we live in, we have people in political and high places who determine how well we're doing based on some other variables. If the stock market is doing well, they believe that everyone is doing well, and I have benefited everyone, regardless of your race, creed, or color. If I have put money in your pocket and a roof over your head, and you're doing well and have given you a few benefits, you ought to be happy with me because that's my God. My God lives on Wall Street, and that's why I got to get my God back up and running. Somebody ought to listen to me here. It doesn't matter if I have to promote my own agenda and put people's lives at risk because I need to get some worship. I need folks to know how great a person I am because of the great things I have done for you. Well, let me just go a little bit further because he's not the only one. Even God had to shut up the gods of sports. He took them all off TV. He shut them all down. Folks couldn't go in and worship and spend thousands upon thousands of dollars on season tickets and advertisement. All you got now are rerun gods. The gods of reruns. We were worshiping those things. God of entertainment. Shut them all down. They're trying to do Dance with the Stars virtually. Or what's that one with the Voice? They're doing them virtually. Why? Because they're still trying to connect with their God. They got to have that. They got to find a way to get to their God so they can get that feeling and they can get what they're missing. But there's only one person that can fill that void. There's only one person that can fill you up. There's only one person that can do all that you need done. And we got to stop running from him. He says, stop the idol worship. Stop it. So now let me give you the third idol he has here. Now he talks about ideal worship. I-D-E-A-L, ideal worship. We already talked about idol worship where you're not doing anything for God. Then we talked about idol worship. So let me just give you this little point here. Notice now, there's not a problem with our worshiping. That's not the issue. We were designed to worship. The problem is not our worshiping. Our problem is the object of our worship. That's the problem. That's the problem we all have. It's the object of our worship. Now, notice what he says here. Before I go to the idea, I skipped a piece. I got to go back. Thank you, Holy Spirit. I just love how he said, Herb, no, you went too fast. I told you this at 4 o'clock this morning. And he told me, and I said, I'm serious. This is when he gave it to me. And he says, if it seems undesirable. And remember, I told you to underline that word because he sat me down right there. Undesirable to serve the Lord. How can it be undesirable? Well, here's what he's talking about. If it seems undesirable to live every day, all day, according to his word. If it seems undesirable to intentionally invite others into God's kingdom. If it seems undesirable to take your time, your talent, and your treasure to invest in God's kingdom. If it seems undesirable to experience God's power and precious presence through praise and worship. He says, then don't worship me at all. See, God, he doesn't want a two-timing relationship. I got a God at home. I got a God at work. I got a God in the street. Yeah. See, there's a strong connection, men, with our relationship with our wives and our children. I'm getting ready to come to that. And he's saying, if it seems desirable to you. And notice he said there first the but. He says, but. He's saying that God has done all of this for you. But even with all he has done for you, if it seems undesirable to you, then, remember I said it's about choices, not an option. It's about choices here. He says, then choose for yourself. He didn't say next week. He didn't say next month. He didn't say next year. He says today. He's saying make a declaration. In fact, Jesus says it this way: I'd rather you be hot or cold. He's saying make your decision. Make your declaration. What is it that I can't do? What is it that I'm trapped by? What is it that I don't have enough power to overcome? Can't you see I can shut down a whole economy and there's nothing you can do about it but get some scientists to try to tell you when it's safe to come outside? There's nothing you can do about it until I say so. I don't care if they find a vaccine. Don't you know that they won't find the vaccine until God says they can have a vaccine? Don't you know that they won't have any power until God says they can have power? God is still on the throne. Listen to him. He says, but if it seems undesirable now, don't have anything to do with me. Ladies, y'all need to tell some guys that stuff. If it seems undesirable to just be in a relationship with me, move on. That's what God is saying. Move on. Pick one of those other gods. See what they can do for you when the time really comes. See what they can do for you when you're lying on your deathbed. Even if you live a good life here, see what they can do for you when you get on the other side. So now let's look at this last little phrase. He says, but, and then he gives them the consequences. Then do this, right? Now, remember I said when you see but in the Bible, that means you're going in a different direction. But now he gives us another but. He turns us back around and says, but as for me and my household. Let me just stop right there. Because I know we've got some grammatical people listening and they're saying, now, did you write that sentence? No, this is Joshua now speaking. God spoke earlier. Joshua saying, but as for me and my household. That is bad grammar. Because we in our English know that you're supposed to put everyone else first and put yourself last. It is very bad grammar. He's saying, but as for me and my household. Notice now, I said it's bad grammar, but it's good theology. Now, why am I saying that? Because what he is doing now, he's putting himself in a position of what his role is in conjunction to his household. He's saying it starts with me. Men, he's telling us something here. The way your household goes is the way you go. You don't let your household lead you. You lead your household. Let me just give you a little parenting right here. I'm going to tell you how Mark Twain tells you ought to raise children. Now, I'm not saying I adhere to this method, but I understand why he says this. Mark Twain says that when children get to be about 11 or 12 years old, you need to just put them in a barrel with a hole in it and feed them their food through the hole. He says, but when they turn 15, you need to plug up the hole. Because that's when they start giving you the most trouble. All right? That's not what I'm saying you need to do. But what I am saying you need to do, you need to lead your household. You need to determine what is acceptable and what is unacceptable in your household. Not what's on TV, not what their friends are doing. As my parents used to say, well, I'm not their dad, and if they lived here, they'd be doing the same thing you're doing. We have a problem with that because we want to be their friends, or we want to be liked by them. I didn't like my dad until I was 30. I loved him. I might have been a little younger than that, but I was way out of his household before I liked him. But I thank God for everything he did for me. In fact, there's probably a little more punishment I should have gotten. Well, I know there were some more. But I got enough of them. Yeah, I did. I'll just make it this plain. I was more afraid of the police. I was more afraid of my dad than I was of the police. That's how it was at his house. He used to say, get locked up. See, you just do it. He said, first off, I'm not coming to get you. In fact, I'm going to bring everything you have here down there so they can keep you. I believed him too, because I never got locked up. Yeah. So this is what Joshua is saying. He is saying he is the spiritual leader Men, we take this role of being the head of the household out of context. It is a powerful role, but it is also a precious role, because now we're saying we're standing in the place of God in our house, and that is the role that we take when we're saying that we're the head of the house. It means that we're going to get in line with God so that we can get that divine protection and covering over that household. That's why the world goes after making men look so useless and so unnecessary, and that's why it's so incumbent upon us as men to get back into our rightful role and stand where God would have us to stand. I don't care what you did before today. You can start today. You can get in place. You can put yourself in position. You can become the man that God has called you to be. You can start right now, because he said, but as for me and my household. Notice now, he says we'll think about it. We're going to consider. We're going to talk about it. We're going to have a conference. We're going to come to a consensus in the household. No, he says, as for me, he says, I'm the spiritual leader here. And what I'm going to do here, the whole household is going to do. And we will serve the Lord. What is he saying again? What is he talking about? He's saying we will strive to live every day, all day, according to God's word. We will invest and invite others into God's family. We will take our time, our talent, and our treasure and invest in God's kingdom. We will experience God's power and presence through praise and worship. Why? Because I'm going to stand with the Lord. Why? Because I know what God has done for me. You see, Joshua didn't just start following God when he became an old man. Joshua started following God when he was a young man. He didn't wait to get old to start following God. You see, you go back and read the story. Joshua was only one of two men out of over 600,000 men that was still living at that time, because he and another man decided to wholeheartedly follow God. Don't you know there's some benefits for us? But we might be by ourselves, but we're never alone. You may be by yourself, my brothers. You may stand someplace that nobody else will stand with you, but it's God is for you, who can be against you? No weapon formed against you shall prosper. If you know that he is El Shaddai, God Almighty, if you know that he's Jehovah Jireh, the God who will provide, if you know he's Jehovah Nisi, the one who will fight your battles, if you know that he's Jehovah Shalom, the one that will give you peace, if you know that you know, then you'll be a man worth finding. You'll be that kind of man that God can be pleased with. And if you're that kind of man, you don't have to worry about what the rest of the world says about you. You can just walk on his promises. And so let me just give you your last gem here, then I'm going to drop some nuggets on you here. The last one is indecisiveness never pleases God. Hear me carefully. Indecisiveness never pleases God. I have to tell you all this, and it's a true story. It's about myself and my call. I was concerned, one, if I was even worthy, which I know that I'm not, and I know it's only by the grace of God I stand here, and that I would never be worthy. God had to share that with me to say, no, Herb, you're not worthy. I got, okay, got that one off the list. But then I said, Lord, I'm not at a position or a place in my life right now where I can afford to follow you like that. Somebody's listening to me. You don't know how much it costs to send kids to college like I do. It's expensive. I can't make that choice and that change right now. Can I serve you here on Sundays, Wednesdays, and every other Saturday and Friday? Can I do that, Dan? That's how most of us serve the Lord. But the Lord touched me and said, you either all in or you're all out. I never regret stepping all in. Life hasn't always been good or great, always high, but I know one thing, he's always been with me. Because I made a decision. It sits right there on my mantle in my den, and I see it often. Joshua 24:15. But as for me and my household, we're going to serve the Lord. It just has to be a settled fact, man. You just have to make that decision that is non-negotiable. That is non-negotiable. So let me just give you some gems here. Let me give you 4 things, 4 gems of a man worth finding. Here's the first one that you need to know. A man worth finding lets his family, watch this, especially his children, see his relationship with the Lord. Let me just talk about this for a moment. What am I saying here? You can fool everybody else. You can fool folks on the outside. In fact, you can fool us all up in here. There's some men who come up in here and boy, they look like they on fire for Jesus. They serve all the time. They hear every time the door church is open, they give plenty of money. I mean, they just doing it. And you like, oh man, that brother's on it. You know, and they go out in the community and they're all on top of it. But you go to his house, you ask his children, you ask his wife. If she says, you say, oh, he does such a great job. If they go, if they do one of those numbers, you know they're not seeing the same man that we see. So the first thing is, whoever you are here, be there at their home. In fact, be that there first before you come here. In fact, don't even come up here. I don't mean that in that way, faking it till you get right at home. Let your children see that. They may not always love it, and it'll be difficult if you've been hypocritical up to this point. So you're going to have to use a lot of grace and mercy. All right, the second one. I knew I was going to be long today, but Father's Day only comes once a year. Y'all took y'all's time and talked and did it. No, I'm just kidding. A man worth finding is a one-woman man. Remember, I talked about this all along. I can say it is a one-God man, is a one-woman's man. Period. Your ears are for one woman, your eyes are for one woman, your mouth is for one woman, your hand is for one woman, all your body parts are for one woman, your feet are for one woman. This is a place where 2 heads aren't better than one. Y'all can read between the lines on that later because I know we got kids watching. All right? The third point, Jim, that I want to drop on you. A man worth finding knows how to put first things first. If God isn't first, it doesn't matter where he is on that continuum. If he's in the second, third, fourth position, he's not God. If he's not God over everything, he's not God over anything. And last but not least, a man worth finding has a warrior mentality, not a weakling mentality. And what do I mean by that? You got to know who the opposition is, and you got to know what you're up against. Life is not a playground, it's a battleground. Brothers, we're in a fight, and they're trying to take us out and take us down. Because the enemy knows if he can move us out of the way, he has access not to just this generation, but at least 3 to 4 more generations. People you won't even see living are counting on you right now. Right now, they're counting on you to man up and be a man worth finding. Let me have a word of prayer with you. Gracious and merciful Father, forgive us when we haven't been a man worth finding. Forgive us, Father, when we've done our own thing, our own way. Whether we were idle at worship or idol worshipers. Father, help us to be ideal worshipers. Help us to worship you in our homes first, in our communities and in our churches. So that when people see us, they'll see you. When people hear us speak, they'll hear you speak. When people see us act, they'll see you act. Because sometimes, Father, we may be the only God that they'll ever see. So help us, Father, be the man you have called us to be. Father, I pray for every man that's listening locally, globally, that no matter what we have done up to this point, Let us now recite what Joshua said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord starting right now. I can't undo yesterday. But Father, I can live for you for this day forward. Father, go with us and be with us. And we'll be all so careful to give you all the honor and all the praise as we become a man worth finding. In Jesus' name, and all of God's people said, amen. Happy Father's Day.